What with the laughter and the fact that it was supper time and he was hungry, Wool got careless. Finally, he teetered a little too far forward and lost his balance. "Hoo! Hoo!" he shrieked as he bounced through the branches towards the ground. Then, all of a sudden, he spread his wings, and the next thing any of us knew, he was flying! Well, sort of flying. Not having done it before, he didn't really know what he was doing even then. You could tell he was just as surprised as we were. He came swooshing out of the tree like a rocket, and he seemed to be heading straight for me, but I ducked, and he pulled up and went shooting back into the air again. He was still hoo-hooing like mad when he stalled and slid back, downward tail first, and hit the ground with an awful thump. By that time, I was laughing so hard I had to lie on the grass and hold my stomach. When I looked up, at last, it was to see Wool stomping into his cage. He was furious with all of us, and I couldn't persuade him to come out again until the next day. At supper that night, my father said, "You know, I don't believe that owl realizes that he's an owl. I believe he thinks he's a human being. You'll have to educate him, Billy." Do you have this picture? I'm pretending that this is Weeps. It wasn't quite as bad as that. Will eventually did learn to fly pretty well, but he never seemed to like flying or to trust it. He still preferred to walk wherever he was going. Weeps never learned to fly at all. I tried to teach him how by throwing him off the garage roof, but he wouldn't try. Boys and girls, I wonder how Billy got onto the garage roof. That does not sound very safe. He would just shut his eyes, give a hopeless kind of moan, and fall like a rock without even opening his wings. Weeps didn't believe he could fly, and that was that. Aw, Weeps. You don't think you can fly? That's too bad. Just before school ended, Will learned a new trick, which bothered me a lot. He discovered that if he took a good swipe at it with his claw, he could tear a hole in the chicken wire of the cage. Once he learned to do this, it was impossible to keep him penned up when he didn't want to be. This worried me because there was a lot of tough alley cats and tough dogs too in Saskatoon. I was afraid if one of them ever got hold of Weeps or Roll when I wasn't around, then that would be the end. After a look at the owl's claws and beaks, Mother said she thought it would be the end of any cat or dog that tackled Wool or Weeps, but I still worried. One night, Wool had a little argument with Mutt about a bone, and Wool got mad and wouldn't come down out of the tree or go to his cage at dusk. I called him and I called him, but he just ignored me, and finally I had to go off to bed and leave him out. I slept pretty lightly that night. With one ear cocked for trouble, it means he's listening out in the middle of the night for sounds, because I knew the cats would be about. And sure enough, just at dawn, I heard a squawk and a scuffling noise outside. I hopped out of bed, grabbed my air gun, and whipped out of the house as fast as I could. Will wasn't in the tree. In fact, there was no sign of him anywhere in the front yard. I raced around the corner to the back, expecting to find him dead and eaten, but instead I found him asleep on the back porch steps. He had his feathers ruffled out the way birds do when they are asleep. And it wasn't until I got right up to him that I saw the cat. Wool was sitting on it, and only its head and tail stuck out beneath his feathers. But enough was showing that I could see that this cat wasn't going to bother anybody anymore. I pulled Wool off, and he grumbled a little bit. I think he found that cats made good foot warmers. It was a big ginger tomcat that lived 2 doors down the street and belonged to a big man who didn't like kids. This cat had been a terror of the birds, other cats, and even the dogs of our neighborhood for years. I got a shovel and buried it at the bottom of the garden. I suppose the cat had thought wool was some kind of new chicken. Well, he found out differently. Dogs are no problem to my owls either. Though Mutt was no owl lover himself, he wouldn't let any strange dog chase them, not without a fight. Several times he saved Weeps from a mauling. Mauling means like kind of attacked. But he didn't need to look after Wool. There was a German shepherd who lived near us, and one day this dog met Wool out walking and decided to see how horned owl tasted. Ooh, I wonder what Wool thought about that, everybody. What did you say? Oh yeah, I know. He's like, don't let the dogs mess with me. I heard the ruckus and came running. But by the time I got to the street, Wool was sitting on the dog's back, digging his claw in for all he was worth and ripping chunks out of the dog's ears with his beak. Sorry to all you dog lovers. The shepherd headed down Spadina Avenue, yip, yip, yipping, so you could have heard it in Timbuktu. Wool rode for 3 blocks and might have ridden him right out of town if the dog hadn't dodged through a hole in a board fence and knocked Wool off. I had chased after them on my bike, but by the time I got to the fence, Wool had picked himself up, given himself a shake or two to settle his feathers, and was his usual friendly self. He gave me a cheerful hoo, 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 and jumped up on the handlebars for a ride home. Hey, do you think that that's what the picture is on the front of our book? I wonder. Word seemed to get around after that the neighborhood dogs took to crossing over to the other side of the road whenever they saw Wool coming. I'm just imagining I'm Billy. And I've got one owl on one shoulder and one owl on the other shoulder. And we have Wool and we have Weeps. Wondering what that would have looked like in that neighborhood. Okay, that's the end of chapter 5.